Oh yeah, note taker. Okay, you're recording all this. Good.
Yeah, always listen. And by the way, the reason I do this is that the authenticity of the discussion, and this is one of the reasons why I take these kinds of sessions, is when you're talking to people, you want to get their enthusiasm, you want to get their insights, you don't want to be scripted. And so for me, this helps me to understand and see how you work through the process, because I'm really interested. You started in 2017, so I'm interested in seeing how you got started and where you are today and where you want to go tomorrow.
Cool. Yeah, of course. I'll share my screen then. I'll start right at the beginning then if you want to.
Okay.
All the way back in 2017. So I'm one of the business development managers here. So I've been here for 2.5 years now, which is pretty much the launch of the SaaS product about 2.5, 3 years ago. You're right in that we started in 2017, but initially it started as our two founders who were selling market reports. They were using the 4 Street technology, but then selling market reports onto global players like Accenture, BP, those sorts of technology reports. And then in sort of 2020, 2021, we took some funding, put the front end on the platform, and then switched to a SaaS-based solution. So started selling it as a supplier discovery market intelligence platform. Again, actually we sit across like 3 pillars in where we service, which is procurement. So we work with BP, Lloyds Bank, all sort of large procurement teams, like quite mature procurement organizations. But we also work with investment, so deal origination, sort of market mapping, understanding what players are available in that space for their fund. And then we also work with consultancies, so the likes of KPMG, and then actually some more niche consultancies like ProcureTech. Do you know those guys? Lance Younger. So they use the platform for identifying procurement software, and they actually use the platform for the Hot 100. So a lot of the judging panels on that at the moment now. So that's the sort of genesis of 4 Street. If I just present this actually, and then I can run you through it. In terms of what we do, can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yes, I sure can. Thanks.
So in terms of what we do, it's an industry agnostic, self-service market intelligence and supplier discovery platform. So we use AI to map out markets in real time based on user inputs. So I know some of our competitors already, the Teal Books, the Scout Bees, those sorts of things. Where we differentiate from those guys is actually we don't have a static database of suppliers. We go out to the web in real time and identify companies based on input from the users.
It's data scraping to a certain degree.
Yeah, correct. And I'll show you. I'll run you through the workflow in a minute. But yeah, that's exactly right. So some of the use cases are, the general supplier sourcing, category intelligence piece. Do you know Bureau?
Yes.
So they use our data for their supplier discovery within their platform. But of course, we also work with procurement teams as well. They're using it as a sort of standalone service. Also, there's a big element of sort of horizon scanning, innovation scouting, because it's all real-time data, sort of looking at what's the next generation technologies, because you can search for undefined markets, because we don't have sort of static taxonomies, which means you can sort of search for anything that's based on your interpretation of a market. And then there's also sort of general procurement stuff, which is crisis management. It's all real time. You can sort of map a market within an hour or so, and there's sort of the value that comes with that. The workflow then is.
Could I just ask you a question? You don't mind if I interrupt and ask questions?
Yeah. Keep the dialogue open, please. Yeah.
One of the things that came to my mind is that you have both the practitioners and the providers utilizing your platform, correct?
Yeah.
Information's coming out, and we're seeing this trend where the larger companies, and I refer to that because I see the size of the organizations, are repatriating development, like back in the basic 4 MAI days in the 80s, of repatriating the development of their own platform solutions.
Yes.
And when I look at what you provide, you sort of have your foot on first and second base, which is quite an accomplishment, because either the practitioner side who wants to develop and build their own can use your platform as a tool, or the providers who may want to get into those scenarios could use your platform to enhance or to, like Barrow. I mean, like that's what I'm seeing here. I mean, is that a fair assessment of the market you're serving?
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, there's two things there. Firstly, because our platform is fully automated, there's no human in the loop. I know ScoutBee, for example, they have sort of a 2-day turnaround because although they're using AI, there's a human element, I believe, in that scouting process. We don't have that. It's all automated, which means it can be embedded into any workflow, which is where the likes of Bureau and some of the other major players, which we're now having conversations with, the iValuers, the Jaggers, they see that as, okay, we can just put this into our workflow, and actually a lot of our clients are asking for suppliers.
So wait a second. This is okay. You're brilliant in all of this, and I gotta understand why you don't have tens of millions of dollars in annual revenue yet. You're brilliant in all of this is because you are actually a key component of that GenAI image everyone's talking about. In other words, they have an existing platform infrastructure, correct? They come for you. You are able to integrate that, not just for providers, but also practitioners into your infrastructure. So now there's obviously going to be concern about scraping the data, how accurate, et cetera. You've heard it all before. But the reality is you are actually the linchpin platform between what's been done in the past and the move and the promotion of GenAI. I mean, that's the only way I can say it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's starting to sort of take off now, to be honest. We're starting to see a lot of our success in this this year, really, where we've done a lot of work on the platform. We're having great conversations with the bigger players now, and actually almost the Bureau thing sort of kicked this off, where that was sort of the January, the Bureau relationship launched. So we're hoping that it's
just this January.
Yeah, correct. So it's all very new. It's all very new.
So let's just go on this for a second there. So basically, you're coming in at the right time at the right place, because all of these organizations, let's go on the provider side, who are GenAI, we're tapping into it. All of these organizations are realistically looking for what you do. Either try to recreate it or say, these guys have been doing it all along. Why bother doing it ourselves? Well, you know what white labeling is, right?
Yes.
You're white labeled. In other words, nobody tells us that this is what we're using and inserting into our process flow. What you're doing is that you have created that, and it's all human. You don't need human cycles in there. I imagine you have a degree of algorithms for sorting and weighting. Like, for example, in the late 90s, when I worked on algorithms for the Department of National Defense for their platform, I had weighted averages of historic performance, delivery, et cetera, and then real-time pricing, geography, real time zone. What you've done is you've created that little modular plugin that boosts whatever the practitioners or providers have. That's what I'm getting, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is what I'm getting. I mean, it's like it's almost like no brainer what you're doing. That's how great it is.
Yeah, well, fantastic feedback. I'll show you the platform, and then you can give me some additional feedback what you think about the platform itself.
But do I have this? Do I have a good grasp of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Yes, you can put us into a already existing workflow, like, as we do with Bureau, or actually if you want to use this standalone platform just as a practitioner, just to do a market map, then you can also do that too. The workflow is sort of three-step approach, which is, first one, you describe the market. So you see the screenshots here. This is looking for ESG software providers. So actually this is done by the Hackett Group. You then enter in that phrase what it is you're searching for. The system then identifies some search terms around that topic, and then we go out in the form of keywords, which are then selected by the user to sort of better define the market. And then we go out to the web and say, okay, what can we find based on the language here? So that's step 2 is then a review process. So the user will then say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, based on what we found. That search process is iterative, and it's the system sort of learns from those includes and excludes. And then once you're happy with that, you press publish, and then we enrich all that data. So we use a mixture of third-party purchase data for things like firmographic company stuff, And then we also do a lot of web scraping. So just to understand like what the companies are doing, what the trends, innovations are within the space. We've got a news and events engine that sits behind to sort of better understand the market. But that's the workflow, and I'll show you it all. But any questions on how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's what I'm thinking. You're gathering this information. One of the things that I done way back when was use self-learning algorithms within a nascent AI platform. In other words, has that data that whether you scrape it or add it from wherever you do, it tracks real-time performance. So the system actually got smarter and smarter at refining the results. In other words, done in Bradstreet, they're static. You're hitting a market there where they have information that could be 90 days old, 120 days old, or whatever else, because all they're doing is going to the same place. You're taking it, and what they did basically is make it easier, but they really don't have that true interactive capability, that advanced capability. What you're doing is you've elevated it to the next level where you're dealing in real time. Does that data learn and self-learn and get better and better? And is that made available to everyone who works with you?
Yeah, so yes, you're right. We call it parasitic training. And it learns from the user inputs, but it's actually only at market level. So if you then launch a new study, so if someone else in a different company searches for ESG software providers, actually we start from scratch. And the reason that's a design principle, because we know that your interpretation of a market might be very different from someone else's. So as someone who it works in a software business, when I look for ESG software providers, I might be looking for something else, something quite different for someone who works in a manufacturing business. So we intentionally don't store any of the learnings, but as a user, when you start to progress through the review actions, it does get smarter and smarter based on what you're selecting.
So in other words, there's what's known as a consistent verification process, so that you're not just dealing with static information, bringing it in and just scraping and going out again, but there's actually the intelligence arm to it to be able to say, look, here, and this is what I'm trying to get. That's why I'm asking so many questions. So sorry about that. But what would happen is that you would have a weighted importance on different elements that the buyer would have. All right, that's what I put in the system. And then when you would get the responses back in real time, the weighted algorithms would again weigh the past performance of known information and then look at the current information and pricing. And then the buyer could look and say, delivery is more important than price. And it would rank the respondents in a set pattern based on real time, historic and dynamic. Or if it was price, the same list of suppliers would be re-ranked, and it would take into account, again, delivery performance, quality, time of day order, all of those factors. That's really what I'm looking for, the meat and potatoes of what you're doing, is that kind of ongoing learning and progression. And each time the supplier scorecard would get updated automatically based upon the most current orders. So you started off with a blank slate, Ryan, and then as you built more transactions and it got smarter in learning, the supplier would actually get scorecards that would become more accurate because they reflected more current information.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense? Is that along the lines of what you're doing?
So I think maybe a few things to cover here, which is firstly, you mentioned things like some pricing, price points and general pricing of whatever you're trying to buy. We don't actually have anything to do with pricing or commodity forecast. We just think that the data doesn't exist. The data is available publicly for it to be accurate enough for us to include it. What it does do instead is looks at things like company language, i.e. If you start to include companies, what are they saying on their websites? Are there other companies that are saying similar things to then surface more accurate results in the next iteration? So if I show you an example of a finished report.
Sure.
So this is the this is the dashboard. So this is 4th Street. Each of these tiles represents a market or a supplier search that we've run. So you can see it's extremely broad. You've got like ferro alloy manufacturers for manufacturing. We've got AI for defense, crisis communications, so technology. We've also got service-based stuff. If I show you something just general, like a procurement-y one that you might recognize, I'll do CLM, contract lifecycle management software. For now, it doesn't really matter. This is the output, so this is the end product. So this I did this for a large car manufacturer as a test case. We found 85 companies in about 30-40 minutes. The first page that we're shown is just the general market overview, so we get information into like what are the top companies in this marketplace, revenue breakdown, how they're distributed globally, some emerging topics based on things that AI has picked up, and then also market insights. So again, we can delve into any of those market insights to see what the trends are, financial predictions for this space, investment sectors, so where the money's going, and then ESG perspectives. If I go to the list view, so this is just all the list of companies we found. For each of these, we'll get like a profile,
Right.
which will give us things like company description, legal entity data, people data that we pulled from LinkedIn. Features and services I'll touch on in a little bit, and then news and events and ESG data I'll talk about in a minute. But of course, we can slice and dice this market by sort of firmographic information, where they're based, size, revenue, things like that. Or actually, we can explore this market in a lot more detail using some of the analysis tools that we have here. So first one is topic mosaic, which again, for every company in this market, we've scraped their web page, we've indexed their use of language, and then we're just finding topical overlap, so relevant things, industry jargon, and then we surface that in this sort of mosaic here. And then we can go one further, which is we can sort of delve into any of the interesting topics, and then select one of the tiles that we think is okay. That's quite cool for us to let's have a look at that, and it'll then show you the companies that are talking about those things. So now we're looking at 32 companies out of the 85 are talking about AI. Let's have a look. What does it say here? AI and risk management.
Okay, so you have a filtering process to drill down to get the specific information that's needed, but the expertise is still needed on the part of the practitioner to be able to say, what does this mean to me? You need a subjective intervention, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. What we're finding is actually the category managers are being asked to do way more with way less resource. So they're like delving into new categories that they don't have historical knowledge on. This allows you to understand markets quite quickly, become a domain expert fairly quickly, just to see like, okay, what are the talking points here? The other one is the feature. If I just reset this quickly, the other one is the feature map, which is saying, again, after looking at the company's web pages, what they're talking about across the web, what are the core features in this space that you need to be aware of as a category manager. So we do a feature dump. That's the first iteration. We can edit this and we can say, actually, there's some nuances here. So there's some functional requirements that I need to see in order to push them through into the RFX process to make a decision about this company. So you can add in your own tiles, but essentially what this allows us to do is understand, what they do, what integrations they have, the capabilities. So if I want to, as an example here, we've got Salesforce integration tile, and now I can then see, okay, 25 of those companies can do that thing. So I'm just selecting at random here, but you get the idea.
Well, you know what I think of, and I go back to simplicity, and I've been in this for 40 plus years. You go from Funk and Wagnalls or Britannica, where you do the research in a static book, to then you get to the stage of searching Google online. Then you get to the next stage of intelligently. So it's like this is a what I would call a focused chat GPT capability, but it has some experience as to what the tile should be, and it gives you the chance to program that. In other words, you're creating, I'll use it as a very simple thing, you're creating a DBase2 platform, easy to use, that people can then, users on practitioners, providers, can then tap into this and use it in a fraction of the time. So now I don't need to have FTE time of, let's say, 3 people, 40 hours, when I can now do it with one person in 20 or 2, because you mentioned half an hour. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I'm seeing here is you're a progression of information intelligence gathering that you still leave the critical decision making in the
Yeah.
hands of the people that get the information from you.
Correct.
But you become a reliable inside source. That's really
Correct.
that's how I would see your whole company there.
Yeah, correct. And we say that we do sort of 85% of the laborious grunt work, which is the research piece, which is traditionally either done either on desktop-based research, or actually you're using, like, Gartner perhaps, which is pay to play, so you're not getting a full view of the market. But again, it's sort of 80% of the work. There's still a sort of procurement layer needed on top of this. You need to have sort of procurement expertise, and we're not making any decisions for you. We're just saying, here's the data.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's where it comes in. Now, here is the interesting point. Is there feedback from clients who use it, practitioners, providers, saying, your information is more accurate here, or here is where your information saved me some money here, or here is the result of us using your information and being able to tie it into a specific ROI? Because it's cool what you're doing. I mean, it's fun. It's in some ways it's elementary, but sometimes the best and simplest things are elementary. The reality is that without the equation of algorithms and self-learning in there, the individuals, how do they track that this has helped them to succeed? Like, how do they track the ROI in terms of not just reduction of hours or FTEs, but also better buying, more alignment with ESG goals, etc. How do they track that? Is that up to each client?
Yeah, and it depends on the use case, I suppose. We recently had some feedback from a sort of a components manufacturer who said that their time to source new products has sort of gone from 6 weeks to like less than a week now, just because the whole research process is so much easier and quicker with 4 Street, where you can just say, okay, this is what I'm looking for, here's a list, let's shortlist it. Now we're looking at 10 that we can move through into the next process. So that's the initial value. There's a lot around sort of understanding markets. So as like I said, KPMG use a platform, and they take a lot of their thought leadership straight out of the tool now. They just sort of say, okay, one, it helps them survive the red face test when they're in front of a client, so that we've got things like news and events data that allows you to understand what's happening, who's buying who in this market, who is there some director changes that we need to be aware of, just to understand the market at sort of a fairly high level, but survive that red face test when we're sat in a meeting with a customer.
Okay, so I now get what you're doing. Now, one of the things I'll send you some links afterwards, because with what you're talking about, measurable results in 2000, and I sold my company for 12 million. Nice. Using the government's scientific research and SHRED program funded my research into strand commonality. The D&D, for example, went from 51% next day delivery to 97% next day delivery within 3 months. They went from 23 collective buyers across different organizations in 18 months to 3 buyers. And their cost of goods savings maintained a level of 23% year over year, because they were able to engage a broader market, and because they also had the understanding of an agent base of how to use this. The system did this, is it said, okay, what time of day do orders come in? What time do we get this? All of these factors and external factors of influence. I think what you've got here is a good, solid foundation. I'm going to want people to talk to you. I want to introduce people to you. I'm going to write about you. But I want you to start thinking, as you go forward into all of these things, how can we be more than just a time-saving information resource? Because if you look at it, there's the Teal books of the world. If you look at it, there's the Chat GPTs of the world. When I discovered through the research in the late 90s, early 2000, dynamic flux versus historic flatline products, and then had to go in and say, what's the difference, and wrote a paper on it. What it was is it was what you're doing now. It was a little bit more advanced, but it was still what you're doing now, and you had to have some experience of the marketplace itself. And you are a proof that the technology can work great, but that there is a responsibility on the side of the end client to be able to understand that. And in other words, when I was talking with what was his, forget his name, Matthew Power, whatever, we had an exchange. He's with Google on AI.
Okay.
He said, you know, you build a beautiful car and then the driver drives it into the lake. Is it the car manufacturer's fault? I thought that was a great analogy.
That is great.
But you know what? I like what you are doing. I want to have future discussions with you. This is the first preliminary that I go through. I like what you are doing because in a way, you're like the clean slate foundation, because everyone else has gone everywhere around the earth and we still have an 80% rate of initiative failure. And by the way, 15 years from now, we're going to look at this technology with the same dismissive attitude we looked when I first came in at floppy drives and 2,800 baud per second modem. The technology is not the problem. It's the abdication of responsibility. And that's what I like about what you're doing. And I find it particularly interesting that you can serve both the provider and practitioner market. I think that you have something there. Anyway, look, what I'm going to do is I've got to cut this short here, but I'm going to start talking about you to my practitioner side, and I'll give you a little bit of history the next time on myself when we talk. I'll send you a couple of links that I know you're going to find very, very interesting to get the practitioner side, going back to the research. And this was a patented process that I had developed in the late 90s and whatever. I should have never sold the company, by the way, but that's another story. But I'll send this to you, and then let's talk again over the next week or so. You have an authenticity, a seriousness that is rare out there. You're not smoke and mirrors. You actually have feet on the ground. I'll send you a copy of this recording as well. You have feet on the ground, sincerity. So there's no BS you're giving me, which is refreshing, because a lot of the demos, if I get a demo, many don't like to, a lot of the demos are like smoke and mirrors. It doesn't even live up to it. So let's do this, Ryan. I'll be in touch with you over the next week or so. I've got a few ideas in there. In the meantime, I'll send you some links that you can utilize, because I think you'll get the flow of it. You're already advanced to that point to get it. And let's see what we can do together, because I think you are, with the incorporation of self-learning algorithms, with the incorporation of all these elements, I think you can be a major player, because you can become the operating system. They call it orchestration. I call it Metaprise. That's what we call it. You can become the operating system for the Metaprise platform that everyone's looking for. So,
thank you, John. I appreciate that. And obviously, we're not procurement people. I'm certainly not a procurement person, so I'm still learning about what seems like a fairly complicated industry. But any sort of feedback is really valued. So please send us some stuff across.
Absolutely. I want to find a way to work with you, because again, you're authentic, and I think you've got something there. So let's leave it at this today. I will send you those links shortly, and I'll be in touch next week. And if you have any questions in the interim, give me a call. But you know, just to get my motivation, I'm 65 this year. I've been doing this 40 some odd years. I've cut 90% of my client base down, because I want to focus on the top 4 or 5 companies out there who are real, because I would like a legacy as to where we finally get off that 80% rate of failure generationally. It sounds hokey, but you know what I mean.
No, that sounds awesome. And I've been reading some of your stuff. It's all great. So send it across. I really appreciate your time.
Okay, we'll talk later. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, John. Bye-bye.